Well, great to see everybody here. Welcome. My name is Neil Cox. I'm a member of staff in History of Art at the University of Edinburgh and the director of the Artist Room's research partnership that is hosting this event this evening. It's great to be here in Stills Gallery, working with them, and to start this third of our screening programme, Clips, which was based on an idea by Ruth Bergon, who's sitting here. It is curated by Tom, who's driving the laptop. And where's Noi gone? She's here somewhere. The idea of this screening programme is to explore works, screen-based works by artists in the Artist Room's collection. As you probably know, it's a collection jointly held by Tate and the National Galleries of Scotland, and comprises works by 38 artists. It's about 1,800 works to date. And I'm always a bit vague about that because I'm never absolutely certain. But it's something like that, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah. Around 15, 16, maybe,
yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, nobody's really sure how many, but there are a lot of works. And the partnership exists to do high quality research around this collection and also to curate innovative events like this one. And the point of these events is to share ideas. These are public engagement events. They're not events where we tell you what to think. We're as interested in your reflections on the material as what we might think about it. And if you want to know more about what we do, you can like our Facebook page. So, this evening, I'm delighted to introduce my old friend Christopher Ganley. And I've got an incredible biography here with very complicated titles that he has, and I'm going to read it out. Christopher Ganley is the Digital Content and Design Manager for the National Galleries of Scotland. He's responsible for leading and shaping the user experience and editorial direction of digital content on all NGS digital channels. It's fantastic stuff, isn't it? Collaborating with internal departments and external partners across the UK. Previously worked as Learning and Digital Manager for Artist Rooms, establishing the project to meet its primary aim of inspiring new audiences, especially young people. During the 5 years he worked on the project, he worked on Artist Rooms, he worked on several exhibitions including Ed Ruscha, displays in Inverness, London, Wolverhampton and Newcastle. And before that, Christopher was the Arts Development Officer in Aberdeen, Museum and Galleries and Heritage in Aberdeen, 2004 to 9. And that role involved programming, events and activities related to exhibitions and collection, raising funds for arts education projects and increasing hard-to-reach groups, especially young people. He did museum studies at Newcastle, photography diploma in 2003, and a BA Hons in art in 2009.
I got my high school credentials.
Yeah, can we have your A-levels or whatever as well? The thing about all of that, right, what it doesn't tell you is what a fantastically helpful person Chris has been for the Artist Rooms Research Partnership, and how much fantastic work he's also done with young audiences across the UK in relation to the Artist Rooms tour. So please welcome Chris, who's going to introduce these films by Ed Ruscha.
Well, I have to start off with a confession, which is I haven't actually seen either of the films that we're going to see tonight. I've seen bits of them. As Neil mentioned, I worked on Artist Rooms for 5.5 years, but the films are actually not distributed in a way that makes them terribly accessible. Actually, if you, Tom, do you want to keep with there's a vodka image at the start? Okay, I just want to thank the research partnership for actually arranging to show these films, because I said they're shown very rarely. And I previously tried to book onto a Clips event. I think it was a Warhol one, but I was declined by Eventbrite. So it seems that you have to introduce a film to get to see them. And luckily for me, the rest of the art world is in Venice at the moment. So you have me. And so as Neil mentioned, I worked on Artist Rooms for 5.5 years, worked on Ruscha exhibitions, initially at Tate Modern, and then we did a Highland tour which included Thurso and Helmsdale and Inverness and Bristol, Wolverhampton and Newcastle. And Ruscha's studio and assistant were incredible to work with. They were really generous, they were really quick to get back to us, and they were involved in all facets of the exhibition. My first encounter with meeting Ed Ruscha was in 2011, and we had a large exhibition of his work at Wolverhampton Art Gallery. And at the time, Ed was travelling from his home in Venice Beach to curate a major show in Vienna. And Anthony Doffey, who, if you don't know, is kind of the man behind Artist Rooms, convinced Ed Ruscha that it would be a good idea for him to stop in Wolverhampton on the way from Venice Beach to Vienna. And so myself and the managing curator at the time went to Wolverhampton train station to meet Ed off the train. And I suppose to give it further context, I don't know if you've been to Wolverhampton, lovely people. I think it had quite recently been voted the worst city in Europe, and also maybe it was the 5th worst city in the world. So it's quite grey, the train station is quite austere, and so this Virgin train pulls up, and Ed Ruscha disembarks with Anthony Doffey and Bob Monk from Gagosian, and they're just like California arrives in Wolverhampton, and they're tanned and they're happy and they're merry, and then we have a whistle-stop tour of Wolverhampton, which involves, it turns out you get a very good Indian in Wolverhampton, and all through the meal Ed just kept on going on about how he needed more vitamin D, and no one really knew what that meant, but it turns out it's vodka. So once we'd identified his need, he perked up a bit. But it was very surreal, and I think that kind of prelude, that kind of first meeting is probably a good place to introduce these films, because I think they're slightly absurd and surreal in themselves. If you put the next slide on, Tom, I think the thing I like most about Ruscha's work and him as a man is just his humility. He's also incredibly generous, and he's really funny. He's quite a striking man, as you can see. So when he arrived, what is the next slide? Is that that's Tate Modern? Yeah. So this is like the original group of works that came in to Artist Rooms in 2008, 2009. Displayed at Tate Modern. I think there was around 20 works in the original gift. The next slide I think is also Tate Modern. And then Ed gifted something in the region of 100 photographs and prints. So the exhibition Wolverhampton, which I think is the next slide, they didn't take many good photographs in Wolverhampton, as it turned out. Was this sprawling survey of his work, included all these photographs, and the photographs quite often come from the books that he became known for in the 60s and 70s, including this one, which is called Every Building on Sunset Strip, which folds out to 25 foot, I believe, and I'm sure we have a copy at National Gallery of Scotland. Yeah, that's where that came from, I think. So that display was just to contextualise those photographs a little bit more. And Ruscha has described his book, so I've got a few quotes here. It is a medium for the people in the street to enjoy. They're made to compete with other machine-made items and other paperbacks. There isn't an art price on them, with the exception of the 2 limited editions, and I think that's one of the limited editions. So if you go to the next slide, Tom, that's Ed with it. I think it's the slide after that I was thinking of. In '69, he made a book called Crackers, and Crackers is based on a story by Mason Williams called How to Derive the Maximum Enjoyment from Crackers. And the book has very few words, black and white photographs, and features a man making preparations in a hotel room before picking up a date for the evening. The date then moves back to the hotel, and as I'm told, much hilarity follows this, much of it involving salad. So Crackers is slightly different to Ruscha's other books in that it's narrative driven. And he's described the book as one of the weakest things he's ever done. And he said it was a book that was a movie fallen short. I made the book first and then I made the movie. So just as the story How to Derive Maximum Enjoyment from Crackers became a book, then Crackers became a film called Premium, which is the first film that we're going to see tonight. The other thing I was going to highlight is, if you show the next slide, Tom, is the constant relationship between Ruscha's work and cinema. So this is obviously has religious connotations, but and it's called Miracle, and it's based on a series of drawings that he did at the time called Miracles in 1875. But it's also, you know, a beam of light from a projector. And the next image again, I think, is referencing end film credits. And there's a whole series of these, and then again the next one is referencing Hollywood. So if you go back to Miracle, so this is the same year that Ruscha made the film Miracle. So he made two films. The second one was made in 1975. It's also called Miracle. And Miracle centres on the day in the life of a car mechanic who has a transformative experience whilst working on the engine of a Ford Mustang. Ford Mustangs also feature quite prominently in Ruscha's work. I don't know much more about the film, with the exception that Michelle Phillips, from The Mamas and the Papas is in it, and it's meant to be incredibly funny. And I think that's the other reason that I like Ruscha's work, is the kind of strand of humour that runs through it. I don't know if there is a still for Miracle where you see the mechanic. There it is there. So that's the second film. And I was just going to finish up by showing you the first image that I saw that introduced me to Ruscha, which is the poster for the exhibition that he had in Edinburgh. I just thought that was a nice image to end on.
So we'll wait and see what Chris makes of those. So we're really interested in everybody's reactions. There's no particular structure to this. There are maybe some themes we could draw out from those films. Looking at them from my point of view, certainly in the first one there are some strong connections to surrealist cinema of the 1920s up to 1930. And Chris, you were saying that Man Ray's a point of reference for Ruscha, and some early Man Ray films, things he made in 1931, 22, 23, these kinds of films, 26, connect with that. And then also in the Darlie Buñuel films, in Chien Andalou and L'Arche d'Or, there are quite a lot of scenes in these kind of rather tawdry, domestic interiors, where there's a male protagonist, a female protagonist, and they're sort of in some weird, erotic struggle that's focused around objects, and the whole salad on the bed thing kind of reminded me of that. But maybe that points to some other issues in the films to do with their, very 1970s gender politics. In terms of
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. I mean, you can sort of think of them in terms of how they depict masculinity, for example. These male protagonists and what happens to them in the films and the way they conduct themselves is quite funny. Anyway, those are some observations to kick off. Interesting what anyone else had to say, or think. Questions for Chris?
The first film is definitely a slight, has that kind of more absurd component to it, doesn't it? And it has that friction between something that feels highly controlled but also kind of random at the same time. But I know that you only ever rehearse once and then they just do it, and I think they're not generally actors that he's working with. Friends or performers or...
The second film was a lot more sophisticated.
Felt more sophisticated, polished.
In the sort of shots and everything, it went from close-ups to, you had that vertical view of his workbench and all this kind of stuff in that film. And there was much more editing.
Well, the second one, it feels like it's conceived as a film, doesn't it? Where the other one goes through these other iterations before it becomes a film.
It's more of him as well. Feels more like Ed, his interests in the second one, whereas the first one, as you said, seems inspired by other surrealist work and not necessarily themes that are in Ed's work, whereas the second film, the interesting cars and things, it's a bit more of his aesthetic.
Anyone else got any observations or questions?
I think it's a charming kicking over of the hero doctor trope. Hollywood has had 1,000 hero doctors who gives up the romance, gives up the date. Yeah, okay, we just kicked it over. And we've transformed the garage from a slum to a clinic at the end.
Yeah.
Which is very, very well done. I think it's a kicking job. Good, well done as well.
I was thinking that I knew Ruscha's work through architecture films and the Venturi Scott Brown work, and it's always the Sunset Strip, very passive looking. And I was really struck on it. It's really compelling, this active, very, very meticulous making. I was thinking of that obsessive looking through making, which you don't really get with the outcome, which is the sort of the strip photographs. They seem very passive, but actually this sort of obsession with the meticulous making, however that plays out, whether it's a salad, bed, whatever, bed of salad, or the mechanic.
Because the Sunset Strip book is in a way it's very throwaway. It's all these, they're just photographs of banal local,
because it is quite literally just every storefront on Sunset Strip.
Exactly. But how it's made, as you say, is actually really careful. This kind of concertina, sort of screen fold structure, and the way the photographs are printed on it and everything.
I don't really know why he made films. I sort of feel like there wasn't anything in the first film that wouldn't have worked just as well as a book. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe even better as a book. There's something about acting it out that makes it a bit less, I don't know, interesting. Does that make sense? Because you said he's only ever made 2 films.
2 films. I think he's acted in 1 film in the 80s, but he's only made 2 films.
So then did he just stop? Like, is he just not interested in making them anymore?
It was always his intention to make a feature film, I believe, but it never happened. But he also stopped making books around the same time.
I just wanted to squeeze in, there is a new work that he's made, a kind of ode to Lawrence Weiner, which you can see on YouTube. It was a birthday celebration piece. It's a motion picture, nothing like this.
Oh yeah, it's more of a document.
You mentioning the surrealists and these kinds of people, it's all fair and fine, but doesn't this work really have more to do with kind of American cinema?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Driller Killer. I think that's a film that really points to this. It's one of some of these short, early films of Cronenberg. Similar color.
When was Driller Killer made? You remember?
It must. I don't know. But it's in the same period.
Yeah.
But it's that same comedy. It's there, It's a lot of this kind of the Warhol gang, and that school obviously had a lot of influence. And I guess you being the director of this program, I guess my next question would be, are we going to see some Lawrence Wiener films? I know he's a really big artist for him, so that might be a good follow-up to this.
We screen things by artists in the collection, and this program, as I say, was curated by Tom and we've got the over there. So we'll definitely be running some more screenings next year.
I think his last book was with Lawrence Wiener as well.
Say again?
The last book that he made was with Wiener, I think, in '78.
Right.
Collaborated with Wiener a few times.
Mm.
But the Wiener film, there was talk of them coming into Art's Room for a while.
Yeah.
That could still happen.
Did other people agree that, you were saying different way made films that?
So yeah, I'm conscious that sounded really harsh actually. Like they are really beautiful, and I think your point about the American cinema is that I think that's actually summed it up. Like it's more that, like with Warhol's films, you can see his aesthetic come out through his films. That's through all the rest of his work. And I suppose with this, I'm quite surprised because if I saw the film without knowing that it was an Ed Ruscha film, I wouldn't guess that it was. It's like that sort of thing. It feels very of its time, and it's almost like, it doesn't feel like it's part of his practice maybe with all the other things that he made, because the ideas he does in his books, for example, that come out in his books are so clear and so beautiful and so material that actually the materiality of film, it's like he's not really gone anywhere near that, and instead he's just kind of tried to make a movie, a sort of funny movie. And I think that's maybe it. That's what I meant, not like why did he bother, that's bad, they were funny. But it's like, I don't understand whereabouts they sit in the rest of his practice. Not that artists should just make one type of work, but that was it for me.
Anyone else, have a view on that? I sort of think that sort of ironic feel to them, and I suppose the sense of the shifting intentions of the characters or something seems to signal that irony that I maybe connect with some aspects of it as well.
Good point.
And of course, that sort of American iconography in the films maybe connects it, but I don't know.
I think it's just fascinating just to find out more about the context of why he made the films. Share the earlier speakers' thoughts about just puzzling out where it fits into his work as a whole. Why he perhaps got something to do with student films, well-known student films of trade equality, and perhaps there was some point where you feel he's simply experimenting with the possibilities of film, and that it might have gone somewhere else, perhaps.
I think that's kind of it, because he's in Los Angeles and he's I think he's just playing with the medium in a way. But you're right, they are both very different, two films.
And then it's funny you said, like, you could imagine if he had then made a feature film, actually, he would have become better known maybe for his films. Like, it's kind of one of these, like, pivotal moments.
How many other filmmakers in the collection made narrative films? That's what I was thinking, because Horse, that we saw, the Warhol film, you couldn't really call it a narrative film. It sort of had it was a sort of performance and a sort of, there was a sort of allusions to stories in it, but it had no kind of narrative structure really.
Did Mapleport not make a film as a narrative to it?
Because that's the big sort of leap, isn't it? When you start trying to make, actually make a kind of tell a story in the film, and that then implies all the editing and the shot making and the characters having characters and interacting and all that stuff, and all those cinema conventions kick in.
Well, the premium obviously comes out of him thinking that he's made a book that has failed because it's narrative.
Which is where you say it'd be better as a book.
In photography, the first film from a bit of the photo stories and it's very mindful in terms of sort of bizarre, surreal narrative, something with the feels and those picture stories.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, is he committing suicide at the end?
I wondered about
Closed
that.
garage, turns it on,
Yeah.
no motion.
I
He's
thought it was
dying.
that dark.
It's the Hollywood story again of the hero who must die. Which I find rather charming.
He's almost had the ultimate epiphany at the end, hasn't he?
Any other observations? If not, have another glass of wine. We'll be talking forward. Okay. Thanks ever so much. Thanks, Chris.